Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is Peter Lavelle, co-founder of The Gaggle and host of RT's talk show Crosstalk. Well, Time magazine, which I don't know whether anyone remembers it.
Does anyone read it still?
Yeah, exactly. Who does read it? Used to be a very big deal. Used to be a very, very big deal. Everyone used to read it. Has come out with its Man of the Year, but now it's called Person of the Year award. And surprise, surprise, the recipients, joint recipients, were Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Um, it's, as I say, predictable. What is bizarre is the fact that this person of the year, man of the year, woman of the year, machine of the year, creature of the year has continued year after year when its original purpose has been vitiated, because the idea behind it originally was who has had the biggest impact on the news in the past year. So irrespective of whether you like this person, you don't like this person, you agree with them or you don't agree with them, who has had the biggest impact? So that's why Adolf Hitler was Man of the Year. I think it was 1938. Stalin was Man of the Year twice. And then Ayatollah Khomeini was Man of the Year in 1979. But because Time magazine got into so much trouble when they made Khomeini Man of the Year, that essentially they changed it, and now it became the kind of person that they essentially approved of, somebody who was big and commendable. So I don't know who's paying attention to this, but you know, it's worth I think taking a look. What's your take, Peter?
Well, you're right. I mean, the original thinking about it was a person of consequence, okay, and that's irrespective if you like or dislike or loathe. But you know, Time Magazine's gotten to the point now where they're saying, well, he should be important, okay? And we're going to back up the fact that he should be important. Of course, no one loves Joe Biden. There was no enthusiasm among the public and within the party, but he should be important, okay? He should be, because, well, Time Magazine and other outlets, we put him there, didn't we? Okay, and we supplied the narrative for him to be there, so we can tell everyone that he should be important. Okay. You know, Kamala Harris. Well, you know, I mean, it's maybe the first time she's found herself on the cover of Time magazine. Maybe she'll find herself there under a different title and within a matter of a short number of years. I don't know, but this is such a reflection of how the media is so desperate to control the narrative and so desperate to tell us what is virtuous, what is important, and how you should feel and act in public life, completely divorced from reality. Okay, you know, maybe the editorial staff at Time Magazine, I don't know where they're located. Do they even have any offices anymore? I actually heard that Newsweek is still published. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's always amazed whenever I come across something from Newsweek. Wow, it's still in existence. I did not know that.
And so, but see, this is the kind of pretend world, because they pretend that they're important. Time Magazine isn't important. Newsweek isn't important. I don't even think that they're really money makers, or if anything, they barely get by. And the quality of the journalism is just rock bottom, awful, awful journalism. Okay, that in our time, George, if you got published in Time Magazine, that was a feather in your hat. It really was, okay? In foreign affairs, I mean, that, you know, that's something you put on your wall, okay? Yeah. And now it's just basically junk. All of it is just junk. Yeah. And so you have these former flagships that are still trying to regenerate the embers of their past fame, okay? And so, you know, okay, Joe and Kamala, I guess, you know, bravo for you, but who cares?
No, that's right. Now, when they made, I mean, when at least it was supposed to be something that mattered, namely Man of the Year, who has had the biggest impact, and then you say, okay, you know, Hitler, Stalin, and then Khomeini. I mean, that at least made some sense. It's like, okay, this was the newsmaker of the year. But now it's hard to say that Biden and Harris were the newsmakers of the year because, okay, it seems that they won the election, but Biden has had no impact on the year. I mean, he was kind of spent his time in the basement, did almost no campaigning. You know, he was the little bit of campaigning he did were absolutely disasters for him. Harris also was hardly around. So if you think of, well, who has had a big impact? Well, Trump has had a very big impact. I mean, he was all over the place, whether it was COVID, whether how he handled it, whether it was his barnstorming campaigning in the last few weeks. Um, so he has had an impact, and then of course the post-election litigation. So who are people talking about? Who are people writing about? Is Donald Trump. So just even if you are going to make it about politics, then Trump certainly deserves to be
Well,
man of
I
the
mean,
year more than Biden and Harris.
I don't think there should have been a person of the year. We could have had an idea or a thing of the year. And what I would have proposed, and this is right off the top of my head, all those extra ballots.
Yes, yeah, quite.
That's because that's what it's all about. An ocean of ballots.
Right.
Extraordinary. But I mean, again, just to kind of reiterate it, it's really a commentary on legacy media, and it's really kind of an embarrassment too, because Time Magazine is never top of my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's like you seem to pay attention to the New York Times far more than I do. I come across the New York Times when I hear about a bad article or a really propagandistic piece, or this hair on fire editorials and op-eds and stuff like that, because I mean, they're trying to convince us that they're relevant. If you're trying to convince someone that you're relevant, then you're in trouble. Okay. Yeah. Or it's like someone saying, well, you don't understand how intelligent I am. Okay. That's kind of remarkable.
Right. No, I agree, because at least in the New York Times in the old days, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it had some good reporters, but what it was pretty good at is writing these very solid, dull summations of a particular issue. So you go, oh, I really want to know something about something about some story, and then the New York Times will give you a 15,000 word summation. It was boring, but at least it was reliable. What it now is really just a propaganda rag. I mean, why would anyone, if you're interested in foreign affairs, why would you go to the New York Times? You really think that they're going to give you reliable information on Venezuela, on Russia, on the Middle East? There's nothing. I mean, you just don't go there anymore. And that, in fact, raises another interesting issue. It's like, if you don't know much about a subject, where do you go for kind of an authoritative, reliable source of information? You don't go to the New York Times. You don't go to the BBC. You don't go to the Times of London. You don't go to the Wall Street Journal. Where do you go now?
Yeah. And the problem is that the people like ourselves, I mean, we not only consume news, we generate news. Okay, and so we're rather peculiar individuals, and you look at the whole scheme of things here. I a couple of examples. I know some Americans that live here in Moscow, and they complain about NPR and they complain about the New York Times, but they keep listening to NPR and they keep reading the New York Times.
Right.
And some very weird conversations come about every once in a while. It's like, well, why do you read that stuff? It's patently, obviously, propaganda. They want you to think this way. That's the poverty of our times, unfortunately. Disinformation is real, but it's coming from what people are told are authoritative sources.
Right. No, that's exactly right. So you pick up a New York Times or the Washington Post, and they're still peddling the Russian assassination squad in Afghanistan story. They're still peddling it. I mean, and it's just an extraordinary thing. And then again, you're supposed to be an authoritative source, and you're still peddling nonsense that has actually been refuted by military people. It's not refuted by Donald Trump, refuted by military people who have no particular axe to grind, and they go on repeating it. Because
and then the cat's got their tongue when it comes to the Hunter Biden story.
Right.
They don't know where to go because the Biden orbit came out and said, yes, you know, I think it was Hunter himself said, I'm under investigation. It's like, oh, really? We thought that was the case, but you know, nobody in the New York Times told us that.
Yes, yes, that's right. And unfortunately, as you were saying about the people in Moscow who follow the New York Times or NPR, that many media outlets around the world follow the New York Times. So you read the Washington correspondent of the Times of London or the Guardian or the Telegraph. They're just simply regurgitating what they read in the New York Times. It's like that's their authoritative source. So whatever you read in the British press or the German press or the French press, it's just simply rehashing what's in the New York Times. So you know,
I mean, for Russia, you know, let's say like a Russian military, okay, and then you'll have an article by the AP and Reuters, and then look closely at the search results, and you'll notice that almost everything below it regurgitates what the AP and what Reuters has to say, okay, and it's just circular, okay. And you know, I'm not going to attack anyone personally, at least not on this podcast here. But you know, there are foreign correspondents living here in Moscow that they read Reuters and they read AP, and then they write their stories about where they are. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary. Maybe you could pick up the phone. Maybe you go talk to somebody. Maybe get a dissenting voice. Okay.
Right. That's a very interesting thing. Exactly. That they never do that. I mean, it's what you know we discussed earlier. Is that we used to have this nice idea of journalists fiercely competing with one another to get the scoop. You know, so I'm going to scoop my colleagues to get the red hot story. But you don't have that now because it's now journalists afraid of being ostracized from the journalistic community. So when you had, I think, that political reporter who had the temerity to ask candidate Biden at that time, what did you think of the New York Post story? Perfectly reasonable question. He didn't say it was true. He just says, "What did you think of it?" He had to go and apologize afterwards. You know, he was just supposed to just doing what you would have thought just a reporter's job. He has to apologize. Well, I'm terribly sorry to have asked such an impertinent question.
You think Seymour Hersh would have touched bases with his colleagues? Well, I've come across this massacre committed by American troops in Vietnam. You know, maybe would you run it? You know, can you ask somebody in the military if it's okay? Okay, right. Come on. Okay, that's what made Woodward and Bernstein in the old days, not their hackery these days. You know, they were the envy. I mean, you and I grew up with that. I mean, they were like icons. It's like these guys, quote unquote, brought a president down, okay? I mean, and now what it is, it's these guys that prop up a presidency that after a unusual election, okay? Right. So, I mean, the revolt, see, it's gone from being curious, doing investigative journalism to stenography, and that's all they are, stenographers.
That's right, and it's very interesting what you said, that, you know, what would Hersh have done? Suppose Hersh had done, he would have gone to Pentagon officials and said, is this true? Was there a massacre of villagers and was covered up by the military? And then the official said, no truth whatsoever in this story. Okay, well, that's it. That's good enough for me. But that's, in fact, the attitude now in the Times when they ran that banner headline about a week or so ago saying, U.S. election officials say there was no fraud in the election. Well, what do you expect election officials to say? Since they were in charge of conducting the election, they're going to say, yeah, there was no fraud in the election.
Did a good job. I did a good job.
So that would have been with Hersh would have said, no massacre. We looked into it and there was nothing, absolutely nothing. Okay, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, good enough. Okay, good enough means you just fall in line and don't make any waves and don't be curious because really what it's all about is if you get a blue check on Twitter, that's what it is, okay? Yeah. And if you don't make any, I mean, it used to be like in the military. I mean, this, what's this gentleman's name? Lloyd Austin, yeah. Being proposed for Secretary of Defense. The guy has a deplorable, awful record. Okay, I mean, talk about screwing things up. And you keep kicking people up for failure. Okay,
Right.
and people that break a real story,
Right.
they're shunned and shut out of the. I mean, Glenn Greenwald, I think, is really one of the best examples here. And I'm really happy that he doesn't hold his tongue anymore. I always admired his journalism. I don't always agree with his politics, but on Russiagate, I think he was absolutely spot on, a good writer, and he's talented enough and fearless enough that he goes out on his own. But he's such an anomaly, an exception. You
Well,
don't see
he is,
other
and,
people
and,
doing
and
it.
he can do it. I mean, he's making a lot of money on Substack, but that's not an option for many people. I mean, it's because it's all by individual subscribers. So that's not an option for other free thinking journalists. But it's very funny what you said about being kicked upstairs, because we mustn't forget that the New York Times and the Washington Post received Pulitzer Prizes for their coverage of Russiagate. So they Pulitzer Prizes. They haven't returned them. They're still holding on to them. We deserve this for spouting nonsense for 3 years about.
But in a more rational world, you should feel so ashamed. You should feel shameful and have regret and remorse. But you don't have that today. You just don't have it. I got it. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Okay. It's such a shameful thing because so much of journalism now is celebrity. It's about celebrity. It's not about doing any kind of work. Okay.
Yep.
I'm not going to do your work for you. Okay.
Right. That's Christian Amanpour, who's basically saying, "Well, I'm not actually going to follow up this story because it's a Republican story rather than, hey, it's a news story. So I'm just not going to do it. I mean, no. I mean, I'm just going to sit here in the studio and pontificate away, and I'm going to call myself a journalist for doing so." It was an extraordinary revelation of how she saw her role. Hey, I'm not following up a story like this, and that I think is the big indictment of this whole Hunter Biden thing, is that by screaming, "Oh, Russia, Giuliani, Bannon," that served as an excuse for them not to follow up a story. I mean, all you have to do, pick up a phone. I mean, all these things, this, like, there was a Ukrainian there who apparently, was in communication with Hunter Biden. That should be easy enough to follow up. Get in touch with this Ukrainian. Did this happen? Don't just sit and say, well, this is a Rudy Giuliani story. I'm not touching it.
Well, I mean, you could have called the computer repair guy and say, "Hello, is this so and so? Do you own a service store?
Right.
Have you come across the laptop being once owned by Hunter Biden? Has the FBI talked to you?"
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you'd get straight answers.
Right. Exactly. But
or Babalinsky,
right.
You cross-examine him.
Right.
Is he a fraud? Find out. Find
Exactly.
out if he's a fraud.
Exactly.
Okay, ask him questions.
That's absolutely right. In fact, they kept saying, "Oh, he's a fraud," but they didn't actually go and talk to him. So it's just like, "Oh yeah, he's a fraud." He's obviously making it up. He's unreliable. Well, go talk to him. Don't just let him talk to Tucker Carlson, and then you just pontificate away about his interview with Tucker Carlson.
What was really beautiful about that interview, obviously it was too short, but when Babalinsky said the following, for me, it was a 10 for 10 kill, is that these are not my words. These are the words of people communicating with me. I'm not telling you what I said. I'm telling you what they said to me.
Right.
Okay. And I have these emails because these emails were on the Hunter Biden computer. Okay. We're communicating with each other. Let's compare. Let's compare to see if they're the same.
Right.
Wow. George, I'm not a genius. That's just called common sense.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, instead of saying, "Oh, this is being debunked," how about you go and debunk it? I mean, remember all the talk of, Ukraine gate, all the allegations about Biden, and Burisma have all been debunked. Well, did you actually get on the phone and talk to this prosecutor? I mean, this prosecutor goes
What,
around
what do
publicly
they have?
saying that he
Do
was
they have
fired
the,
because of Burisma. No,
do they
no,
have do they have the debunk wand?
no,
Debunked.
yeah, that's right. You are hereby debunked. Debunked.
It's kind of like a fatwa,
Yes,
okay?
that's right. Yes, yes. Well,
Well, we go full circle here, okay?
that's it. Well,
You know, this is the state of journalism here, and Time Magazine embarrasses itself, okay? Because if they have to convince us that this is an important person or persons, then you know that they're irrelevant. And that's
exactly right. And I think that given sort of the developments of the last few days, I mean, it's already looking increasingly shaky whether whether Biden will in fact assume the presidency, and if he does, how long he will last there. So you know, it's all somewhat, to say the least, premature. But anyway, we shall be, of course, following all the media and its doings with our customary laser-like focus. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.